We have, of course, two very prominent members of Parliament with us this evening, representing the two major parties. And the theme of our debate dinner is who is going to win government after the election. So we have from the government Julian Leeser, and I must confess that he's also my local member. And representing the opposition, the Australian Labor Party, we have the Honourable Linda Burney. And Linda just had her birthday yesterday, so we wish her birthday. Happy birthday, Linda.
Although tonight I suspect will be less about the things that we agree on and more about the choice we will have on the 18th of May. Before I get to that, I just want to say a couple of things about the Chinese Australian Forum. I'm very proud to have been a member of this forum for over 10 years. And in fact, the former President Patrick Burney tells me I'm possibly the first person to be a member of the Chinese Australian Forum who have been elected to the federal parliament. So I'm very proud of that. The CAF has a very important role, and that is to bring the issues that are relevant to the Chinese Australian community to government, and to provide a forum such as this one for discussion about politics, public policy and ideas. 10 years ago, when I was the head of the Menzies Research Centre, I wanted to understand the Chinese community more, and the CAF put on a forum for me when I reached out to them. I've been involved in forums with you on the Bill of Rights debate, and at the last election, Linda and I and some of our other colleagues participated in a debate similar to this evening. Finally, prior to my election as a member of the Parliament, I was the head of a committee of the Jewish community that dealt with intercommunal relations, and together with the Chinese Australian Forum, we organised a very good event to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the liberation of the Shanghai Ghetto, something that people don't know enough about in this country, but is indicative of a relationship that goes very deep. I'm a strong supporter of multiculturalism, always have been, always will be. And as the federal member for Berowra, I'm delighted to have a community that includes 9.1% of my community who have Chinese ancestry, 6.4% who are actually born in China, and 9.5% who speak one of the Chinese language dialects. And I'm also proud to be a life member of the Cherrybrook Chinese Association. Last year with Chris Bowen and China Matters, I did a bipartisan study tour to hear a little bit about how things are in China, from foreign businesses doing business in China, and also from middle-class Chinese people, to get a bit of sense of how they see the future with our largest trading partner. I'm very proud to be part of the government that executed the Australia-China Free Trade Agreement. 98.5% of all Australian exports to China now go through with zero tariffs, and that is a fantastic achievement. Australian exports to China have grown by 35.4 billion%, and we've recently announced the National Forum for Australia-Chinese Relations. So the relationship and the work our government has done is very important. On the 18th of May, Australians go to the polls. And I can't think of an election campaign where the choice for Australians has been clearer than the one that we will face on that date. The central question of the election campaign is, who do you trust to deliver a strong economy? And the question is, why do you want a strong economy? You want a strong economy because if the economy is strong, we can do so much. People can work, people can invest, people can have confidence in the future, people can go about their lives and make decisions with certainty. Everybody benefits when Australia has a strong economy. But despite the global economic situation, Australia's economy is strong. We're delivering the first budget surplus in more than a decade. As Josh Frydenberg likes to say, we're back in black and back on track. We're going to maintain those budget surpluses without increasing taxes, and we're paying down debt. I'm very proud that unemployment is at below 5% in this country. And last year, for the first time in our history, more than 100,000 young Australians got a job. With a strong economy, we want to take things further, and that's why the Coalition has a pledge to create another 1.25 million jobs over the next 5 years. We also have the lowest level of welfare dependence in 30 years. And when you think about economics, the human dividend is low levels of welfare dependency and low levels of unemployment, and we've delivered both. We're going to deliver tax relief for families and small businesses, allowing Australians to keep more of what they earn and to decide to do with that more. This budget, taxpayers earning up to $126,000 get tax relief of up to $1,080. Our tax policy, which Labor opposes, will see 94% of people paying no more than 30 cents in the dollar. That's a terrific payment. For small businesses, we're extending the instant asset write-off up from $30,000, allowing businesses who have a turnover up to $50 million to access that. And that's a terrific measure, because what it means is that businesses can go about purchasing capital that they need and get the benefit of that in a tax sense in year one, rather than waiting for it to depreciate. This encourages people to invest and has positive downstream effects as businesses buy from each other. We're reducing the small business tax rate to 25%, because we know that small businesses can do more with their own money than government can. We know they can employ more people, they can invest more money back into their businesses, and they can expand those businesses. And we can't provide the services we need, we can't grow the economy unless small businesses are doing well. We want more businesses to meet that goal of 1.25 million additional jobs. How do we do that? Through the creation of more apprentices. It's why we have a policy to create 80,000 new apprentices and to increase the employer incentive payments to $8,000 per apprentice, because employing apprentices is important, but we need to encourage employers to do more. And one of the important things that we always do as Liberal governments is keep our borders secure. We keep our borders secure, and that's important for everybody, because that improves public confidence in the immigration program. And we remember last time Labor was in government, 50,000 people came by boat. On 800 boats, so 1,200 people died at sea, and this was a national tragedy. Only by managing the economy well can we deliver people the services that they need. Over the last 5.5 years, we've increased funding for public schools around the country, more than 60%. No federal government in our history spent more on education. In my own electorate, we're delivering $1 billion to Berowra schools over the period to 2027, whether they're government, independent or Catholic. We've increased funding for hospitals by more than 60%. We've increased funding for Medicare by more than 27%. And bulk billing rates are at their highest level today, 4% higher than when Labor left office. We've been able to list more medicines on the PBS. And not a month goes by when somebody doesn't contact me about a treatment that they're seeking that's not on the PBS, seeking its listing and the government's support. We're investing $100 billion in infrastructure around the country, including in my own community, the $412 million investment we're making in North Connects, which will take 5,000 trucks off Penn Hills Road every single day and give that road back to our community. Investing in roads, investing in infrastructure is not just about infrastructure for their own sake. It's about what they give you as a family, what they give you as a person. They give you more time with your family, more time to contribute to your business, less time to be stuck in traffic. We've increased the urban congestion infrastructure fund because we realise urban congestion is an issue. We're trying to make lives easier for small businesses and families, and we know we can do this without increasing taxes, because Liberals, we always know how to manage money. As the Prime Minister says, we're giving a fair go for those who've had a go. A strong economy also provides other social policy dividends. And as someone who was bereaved by suicide, as the parliamentary chair of the Friends of Suicide Prevention, I was particularly pleased with the $500 million we are now putting into suicide prevention, particularly to tackle suicide issues around young people, Indigenous people, and people in remote and rural areas. And this is so important because, as we know, 8 people die by suicide every day. These are just a few examples of what we can do with a strong economy. Now, you can't have a debate without pointing out the compare and contrast. So let me tell you something about what Labor is going to do if they are elected on the 18th. Labor, as we know, cannot manage money. The Whitlam government couldn't do it, the Hawke-Keating government couldn't do it, the Rudd-Gillard government couldn't do it, and we know Bill Shorten can't do it. Remember the last time Labor came into government? In 2007, they inherited a $20 billion surplus, and within a year they've given us a $27 billion deficit. They turned our strong borders into weak borders, and we've spent 10 years trying to get us back to where we were. This election, Bill Shorten has $387 billion of new taxes. Taxes on retirees, on housing, on energy, on small business, on anyone trying to have a go, and even that superannuation tax he doesn't want to talk about. These taxes will increase the cost of living. They'll weaken the economy. Labor, last time they were in government, had lost control of the economy so much that Chris Bowen stopped listing medicines on the PBS. Labor will increase the cost of your power bills with their 50% renewable energy target and their 45% emissions reduction target. BAE Economics says this will increase the wholesale price of electricity by 50%. And now they have an electric car policy with a target of 50% of all cars being electric cars. There's nothing wrong with electric cars per se, but their policy effectively rules out 17 of the top 20 selling cars. A 50% target wipes out half of the excise revenue. Their policy would increase costs of cars today by $5,000 and decrease the cost of the value of trade-ins for people. And Mr Shorten tries to tell us you can recharge a car in 8 minutes. Well, I can't get my mobile phone to recharge or some of my kids' toys to recharge in that time. Labor likes to tell us they've had some stability, but they've had 6 years to come up with an electric car policy, and this one is as half-baked as their idea was about the NBN, which they put together on the back of a cocktail napkin on a flight ride. The choice for Australians is between a government that's lowering taxes or Bill Shorten's Labor Party that will impose higher taxes and will increase the cost of living for families and small business. All of this will weigh down our economy. It's taken us 5 years to turn around the mess we inherited. We're only just turning the corner. Now is not the time to let Bill Shorten and the Labor Party take control of the economy again. On the 18th of May, I ask you all to vote for the return of the coalition government.
Can I begin in the language of my people, the Wiradjuri people of southwestern New South Wales, by saying Balam Ambul Aragu Bang Marang Warang, and that is recognising the traditional owners of this part of the world, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I say to people here tonight also Wan Chong Hao. My speech is slightly different to Julian's. I want to tell you a story. I want to tell you a story a little bit about myself and the things that I believe are important and the things that my party believe are important for this nation. Can I firstly recognise you, Benjamin, as the chairperson of the China's Australian Forum. I want to recognise my friend Julian. We are very good friends and have a great deal of respect for each other. I'd like to recognise the many community leaders that are here this evening from many different communities. I'd also like to recognise the sitting members of Parliament, as well as those that are candidates for the Greens, for the Liberal Party, and of course for the Labor Party. And I particularly would like to recognise Scott and Kenrick and Jason and others that are young people in the community doing so much. I'd like to say I'm glad to meet the Liberal candidate for Barton. It's wonderful to meet you. No doubt we'll be seeing a little bit of each other over the next 3 weeks. Perhaps a pre-poll on Monday. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. What the Labor Party stands for in this election is a strong economy, but also people. And I will outline what I mean by that in a moment. But I want to also make sure that that you understand some of the policies that the Labor Party is putting forward. I know that you want to hear about the economy and employment. I know you want to hear about social welfare. I know you want to hear about tax, infrastructure and citizenship. And if there is a change of government in 3 weeks' time, I will be the Minister for Families and Social Services, so will have responsibility for the NDIS, as well as Centrelink and all social services. And I'll also be the Minister for the Prevention of Family Violence, which are very big issues for us to be dealing with. In fact, I was in Melbourne today where Labor made a commitment of $660 million to keeping women and children safe in this country. And family violence does not discriminate, and it does not pick social or economic agendas. Julian made the mention that there has been a surplus developed, planned surplus for next year by the Morrison government. Let me remind you that 1/4 of that surplus is built on the back of shortchanging people with disability, $1.6 billion. And that is the truth. There is a planned underspend for disability in this country if Scott Morrison is returned. I want to also mention, as Julian did, Labor's commitment to TAFE. We are committing to 100,000 free TAFE places across Australia if we are elected. And that will mean that we will have the opportunity for apprenticeships, and we are also committing to $17 billion in additional school funding as well. We are investing in university places. And I want to remind Julian and those that think that Labor does not manage the economy well, is when Wayne Swan in 2007 was the Treasurer, there was the global economic crisis. Guess what country, what only Western country in the world didn't suffer a recession? It was Australia. And the reason was because we had such good economic management by Wayne Swan and the Labor Party that avoided recession in Australia in 2007. So please don't talk to me about who manages the economy and who doesn't. Of course, some of the most important things that have been said by former Prime Ministers was Paul Keating, everyone. He once remarked that when you change the government, you change the country. And that's exactly what I would urge you all to do at this upcoming election. Scott talked about Australia being a lucky country. And we are a lucky country for many reasons. And I pay particular homage to the Chinese community. You have been here as long as any other community in this country. And I and the Labor Party are about truth-telling. And part of the truth that needs to be told in the Australian story is what happened at Lamming Flats and what happened to Chinese people during the gold rushes. That is part of the truth of what we need to hear in this country. I want to also say that in relation to tax, and we have had a lot of discussion on tax, we in Labor stand ready to invest in schools and hospitals because we want to build a future for Australia instead of looking only to the next election. Schools and hospitals are funded from your and my taxes. That's how we get public services in this country. And we know very much that the Grattan Institute revealed only last week the Liberals would need to finance their tax cuts by cutting spending on schools and hospitals by $40 billion a year. That is how the Liberals are planning to fund their tax cuts, by $40 billion a year tax cuts and cutting spending on schools and hospitals. Schools and hospitals, and I know how much people in this room value a good education system and a good health system, are critically important. But if you cut $40 billion away from those things, it's like cutting $4.8 $4,800 a year from every Australian household. And that is not something that Labor would even contemplate. They also wanted to say we are ready to support reducing the company tax rate to 25% for businesses with turnover of less than 50 million. And we support extending the instant asset write-off for small business making investments less than $30,000. They are substantial and important tax cuts for small businesses. Many of you, of course, are small business owners. And Labor is the party for multiculturalism. Labor is the party that has protected 18C. Labor is the party that will introduce, and we are very excited about this, plans for long-stay parent visas. Not two parents, but both sets of parents for people that want to bring their parents to Australia. That is a very important change to our visa system. Under Labor, families living here will have the option to host both pairs of parents for between 3 to 5 years, because Labor understands that families shouldn't be forced to choose between pairs of parents. We also know that multiculturalism is what has built this country, and we stand firm in terms of our commitment to multiculturalism and diversity. It is also very important that we think about young people. Julian is absolutely correct. And maybe we can say in the overall scheme of things that unemployment is at the percentage that Julian spoke about. But let me tell you, you go to the Hunter, you go to the Central Coast, you go to western towns in New South Wales, unemployment for young people is not 5%. Unemployment is 20, 30, 40 and 50% for young people in those communities. So our commitment is not just to the cities, it's to regional and remote Australia as well. We talked about closing the gender pay gap. We made some important announcements today, particularly for older women who are becoming the most vulnerable in our community. Pay equity in Australia in the public service is something that is absolutely important. I am going to be responsible for 25% of the federal budget if I and my party are elected on the 18th of May in 3 weeks' time. And I can tell you that the arbitrary staff cap that has been imposed on the public service is holding this country back. And Labor will lift that staff cap. So in the NDIS, there will not be 3,000 people employed, there will be 10,000 people employed, and that is crucially important. Can I just finish up by saying a couple of things? And I hope that I've stuck to my time. In the social services space, the NDIS keeps me awake at night. We have a strong plan to reform it and to get it back on track. And social services through Centrelink and other instrumentalities will be changed under a shortened Labor government. And the final thing I wanted to say, which Julian did not mention, I know for the young people in this room it's vitally important, but it's vitally important for humanity, everyone, and that is the issue of climate change. Climate change is the biggest threat to society and the world as it stands right now. The Liberal Party have had 13 policies in terms of energy and have now ended up with none. There is not a climate change policy. Our policy for renewables, yes, our policy for electric vehicles are things that will look after our planet and make sure that the young children that you are going to have will have a planet to inherit, not a mess that is going to be left if the Morrison government remains in power. So I'm grateful to have been invited to speak tonight to you all and to have the opportunity to outline Labor's vision for a better Australia here tonight. I am going to be, if we are elected, a minister in a cabinet that is very much about people, very much about the economy, and very much about protecting the nature of this country. Very much about protecting the nature of this country. So I thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing your questions and continuing this conversation with you all. The announcements we made in Melbourne today to protect families, protect women, and make sure that we are a society of decency were important announcements. There
are quite a lot of questions here, but there are also question papers on your table. If you like to put down your question, and we will have people, William and Kendrick or Scott will come around and pick them up. I don't think that we will have enough time in 30 minutes to answer all the questions, but our intention is to give all the questions to both to Linda and to Julian, so that they can prepare the answers, and we hope that we can have the answers and we put it on our website. Before we proceed to the question time, Q&A, I just want to let you know that we are organizing a forum on the 28th of May, Tuesday. And this is part of our 2019 Future Challenges series. And this is the first session. And the title, ladies and gentlemen, is Trusting Chinese Australians, Beyond Political Donations, the Communist Party and Spies. So this is a very, very complex and controversial issue, which has been becoming more and more important perhaps over the last 2 years. We don't have all the solutions, of course, but we like to talk about it and see whether there is something that we can do about it. And we have three very distinguished speakers. One is Dr. Tim Safrawansen, who is the retired Race Discrimination Commissioner. And we have our own Jason S.M.Lee. And we also have Professor Lawrenson from the Australia-China Relations Institute from the UTS. So now we will go to the questions. The first question that I want to take, with respect, can you please sit down and not make a nuisance of yourself? Yeah. Now the first question is to our guest is. What is your party's economic policy to maintain the growth?
Thank you, Benjamin. So the question was in relation to our party's economic policy to maintain growth. I just want to make a couple of quick points so Julian has time to answer as well. So I spoke about the fact that Labor steered Australia through the global financial crisis in 2007. And we did that because we understood that investment was important. And one of the reasons that many of our schools now have those fabulous halls and good facilities was in fact through employment. Under this government, the net debt, under the Morrison government, net debt has reached a record high, which is something that is not spoken about very much. It is incredibly high. And I think that the fear-mongering about a debt and deficit is just that, it's fear-mongering. We will boost investment and create new jobs with the Australian Investment Guarantee, so we will give a guarantee about investment. There will be targeted tax relief for businesses that invest in Australia and Australians. The government is playing catch-up when it comes to supporting businesses. We want business to invest and grow. And we want the investment guarantee for all business to be able to immediately deduct 20% of any eligible asset worth more than $20,000, with the balance depreciated in line with normal depreciation schedules for the first year. This is very dry stuff, but it's very important. And we also support the reduction of company tax, the tax rate to 25% for businesses with a turnover of less than 50 million. And we also, as I said, want to extend the instant asset write-off for small businesses making investments less than $30,000. I won't talk about the investment in education, but that's absolutely fundamental when you think about the long term. You can't think about business and investment in the short term. You have to have a long-term view of where you're heading with this. And I remind you that the present Prime Minister was the Treasurer when he delivered that shocking budget in 2014 that saw social services and poor people kicked from pillar to post, and that is still affecting us today.
Well, I wonder if I could respond to a few things that Linda said both then and also in her remarks. The truth is, in relation to the global financial crisis and Labor's spending as a result of that, it is not a heroic or difficult decision to spend other people's money. When we had left government in 2007, we left a $20 billion surplus. There was money in the bank. Yes, some expenditure needed to be made in relation to that situation. But we say that the quality of the spend was bad and that the second tranche of the spend was never needed. Linda spoke about the school halls. We had many public schools that weren't able to determine what sort of school hall they'd get. Many of those schools actually ended up paying double for something that they didn't want. We also actually didn't mention the pink bat scandal, where 4 people died in fires in people's homes because Labor was just desperate to get money out the door. Labor did not manage money well during the financial crisis. They never managed money well. They don't think about the consequence of their particular policy programs. Now, in relation to what we're going to do to increase growth, to keep the economy going, we've got our target for 1.25 million new jobs in the next 5 years. We've got a tax plan that sees most Australians, 94% of Australians, pay no more than 30 cents on the dollar tax. And that's great. That creates incentive for people. That says to people, get out, work, have a go. We've cut small business tax. We're cutting small business tax to 25%. You know, at the last election, Labor thought a small business was only a business with a turnover, not a profit, a turnover of 2 million. They had to be dragged kicking and screaming to 10 million and now to 50 million. It's because they don't get what makes the economy tick. It's as Linda put it, to them rather dry. But it's a fundamental. If we don't get businesses growing, if we don't get people investing, if we don't get people into jobs, if we don't give people more of their own money so they've got more control over their own lives, so they can choose what they want to do with their money, then we won't have the growth that we need. And what worries me about some of Labor's plans is actually they'll increase the cost of living for people, they'll increase the cost of doing business, they'll increase the cost of electricity, and they will make it harder rather than easier for ordinary families and for small businesses to get ahead and for the economy to grow.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to put to our guests these questions relating to social welfare, affordable housing, and social security benefits. There are 2 questions. 1, do either party have formulated policy that will address these 2 imminent issues? 2, is your party committed to an immediate increase to New Start and the establishment of independent mechanisms to ensure welfare payments are fair? I'll ask Julian to answer this question first.
Can I make a general point about housing affordability first? I think that's the important issue. Generally, it's certainly the absolute barbecue stopper in my electorate. What I think we have seen over the last 12 months, and I know this from talking to real estate agents and if you're right across Sydney, is a cooling housing market. 20% has been wiped off the value of people's homes. You had Harry Triggerboff on the front page of the paper the other day saying he sold 5 apartments in January. This is one of Australia's biggest property developers. But the housing market was overheated, there's no doubt about that. But what Labor is proposing to do with their housing taxes will take a cooling market and put it in the deep freeze. It will force property prices down, the value of people's homes down, and rental prices up. And when that happens, that is a terrible scenario for them. Because for most Australians, the most valuable asset they own is their own home. And if their most valuable asset is going down in value, they lack confidence to spend and invest. And that's a really bad thing. And if people's rents go up, then that makes it hard to actually get into the housing market in the first place. So the worst thing that we can do in terms of housing affordability at this particular point in time is to do things that will decrease the value of people's houses and increase the cost of people's rents. Let me say something about New Start. New Start is reviewed twice a year, and it's often increased as a result of those reviews that happen twice a year. That's an orthodox process. But as I said right at the beginning of my speech, you can't afford to do things like increase the amount of money that's being spent on schools and hospitals, and we have increased it to the order of 60%, or even consider increasing social welfare if you're not balancing the books, if you're not having a strong economy.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Two things, 2 points I'll make. In terms of Labor's plans in relation to affordable housing, we are going to invest in building affordable housing. I think it's 250,000 new housing units, or 250,000 new dwellings will be built across the country under the Labor plan. And that is something that will mean that women escaping domestic violence, particularly older women that find themselves in very difficult circumstances, will be able to have access to affordable housing. I think the Liberal government, both in New South Wales and nationally, have handled the issue of affordable housing in a very, very bad way. Secondly, in relation to New Start, you would have heard Bill Shorten, you would have heard many of senior Labor people make the statement that New Start is too low. It is too low. Anyone that thinks that you can live on $40 a day is absolutely kidding themselves, despite the fact that there were a number of Liberal politicians at the time that said that they could live on $42 a day. What I will do, and it will be my responsibility, everyone, is that there will be a very, very intense review of all working age payments. So New Start, DSP, how the regional assistance payment works, how the energy supplement works, and how they all fit in with each other. I'll study as well. So that will be, and you do not have a review to reduce something. You have a review to make the case, both in the public and within the Parliament, that New Start is too low, and that there is a very strong view amongst the Labor Party that it does need reviewing and it does need addressing. Paul Fletcher, the 5th Minister in 5 years for social services for the Liberals, says it's about right. It is not about right. It means that people who are the poorest and the most vulnerable are literally going days without food and not getting medical attention because they cannot afford it. And that is not a lucky country.
Thank you, Linda. Now I have a question from the floor, which is directed to Julian Leeser. And the question is in relation to the foreign interference or foreign influence transparency bill. Do you believe this is aimed at the Chinese?
The short answer to that question is no. I have the privilege of serving on the Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security in the Parliament, and we considered this bill in great detail over 9 months and heard, I think, something of the order of a couple of hundred submissions, and I think we heard 9 separate days of hearings. The intelligence and security agencies in this country tell us that the level of foreign interference in Australia today is at the highest level it has ever been. It's higher today than it was during the Cold War. Let me say that again. The level of foreign interference in Australia is higher than it was during the Cold War. What does foreign interference mean? It means that foreign governments and foreign non-state actors trying to interfere in our political system, trying to interfere in our bureaucracy, trying to steal our secrets, both governmental and economic. It's very important that Australia has a scheme that means that if people are trying to influence the political process, that we can see who's doing it, that we shine a light on what's happening here. And I think that the Foreign Interference Transparency Scheme Bill has got the balance about right. And it is not directed at any particular country or any particular government, but it is directed at ensuring that Australians can have confidence that one of the oldest continuous democracies continues its great tradition of openness and democracy and transparency.
Now, I have a question which has been directed to Linda Burney. How will you reform the NDIS? Please explain, Linda. We want to know what is your plan for performing as the official program, or reforming the official program has only been rolled out since 2016.
Thank you, so whoever wrote that question. It's such an important question. I think everyone in the room would know what I mean when I say NDIS. It's the National Disability Insurance Scheme. The organisation, everyone, that runs the scheme is called the NDIA, the National Disability Insurance Agency. The NDIS was brought in by Julia Gillard, and it was about providing individual choice and finances to people living with disability. And all communities are very much concerned about this. The NDIS has become an extremely slow, bureaucratic process. Any of you that have a son or a daughter or are caring for someone with disability and have tried to apply for the NDIS would know exactly what I'm talking about. There is something like a 40-page application, and it's taking months and months and months for those applications to be processed. People with a disability don't even get to see what their plan is before it goes off to some bureaucratic nightmare for a decision. To have a review is taking months and months as well. So very quickly, I won't go through all the plans that I have to reform it, but basically we have announced that there will be proper training for people who are doing the assessments. I'm going to have a look at what categories that people can qualify under the NDIS, because I think they're discriminatory. If you have episodic illnesses like depression or anxiety, you don't qualify. If you have a chromosomal disease and clearly have a disability, you don't qualify. So that will change. The really challenging thing, everyone, is to change the culture of the organisation. That's not about money. That's about making sure that people with a disability and their families are put back at the centre of decisions instead of not being considered. The other thing, of course, is to make sure that there is a Royal Commission that's been announced into people with disability, and that Royal Commission will see its way through, and I'll make sure that that happens. The final thing I'd like to say, and like I said, we can't cover everything, but there is a huge problem with the NDIS in terms of the red tape and the bureaucracy that families try to get through and there is not enough advocacy. So Labor will be supporting advocacy in this area. That is people to support people and their families, and we'll be reducing the red tape dramatically so families can actually access and feel confident and not destroyed by a scheme that was set up to help your loved one with a disability.
Can I just say something quickly on the NDIS? And disability, I think Linda is right. The Royal Commission is vital. It's a $500 million Royal Commission. It's going to be very important. But just on the NDIS, I want to address something that Linda had said in her introductory remarks. The truth is that the budget is not being balanced by cutting the NDIS. Spending on the NDIS is increasing every year. It was $6.4 billion last year. It's $13.3 billion this year. It's $17.9 billion next year. It's $22 billion the year after. The NDIS is, by Linda's own admission, a demand-driven system. So if more people migrate across from the state system with the old block grants into the NDIS, the money will be there. That's the way the demand-driven system works. It's the same as the higher education demand-driven system. It's very important. People don't think that we are cutting the NDIS, because we're not. We want to see the state governments who are responsible for the old system transferring people across, transitioning some of that data across to the NDIS.
Thank you very much, Julian. Now we'll come to the next question, which relates to tax policy. And the first question is, would both speakers explain how they would look after the welfare of senior Australians in view of the ALP's plan to abolish tax refunds on excess franking credits? And two, what are the net benefits of these two proposed changes have to the economy, especially to our current precarious housing industry, besides increasing tax revenue to the government? Julian first.
Well, Labor's retiree tax is one of the worst pieces of public policy that has ever been put onto the Australian political landscape. This is a policy that discriminates against people who have made provision for themselves. It discriminates against people who have self-managed super funds. It discriminates against those people who were working before compulsory superannuation came in and decided that they would put aside some money into shares for their retirement. It's based on a false premise that you're somehow getting tax relief twice. Shareholders own a company. We want people to invest in companies, because when they invest in companies, those businesses do well. Companies already pay company tax. The franking credit acknowledges that. The people that this affects most are people on incomes of about $30,000. Grandparents who often help their grandchildren and their children with expenses. This is a big effect on the economy, more than just the retirees themselves. I think that this is a terrible piece of public policy, and I can tell you, we will not be making any changes to franking credits. We will not be making changes to superannuation. We will protect retirees who've looked after themselves, because at the heart of the Morrison government's message is the idea that if you have a go, you'll get a go. And so we want to encourage people to actually take provision for themselves, because the more people that look after themselves in retirement, it means we have more money that can go to the most deserving people in our country. We've got more money that we can put into schools, more money that we can put into hospitals, more money we can put into infrastructure, more money we can put into defence. If Labor's franking credits policy comes in, not only will it have a bad effect on investment, but it will effectively see older people go back on the pension, and that's terrible. You know it's dodgy because it doesn't apply to union-controlled super funds. That's a really dodgy element of this.
I'm sorry, and I'm not going to make myself popular. Julian, that is rubbish. It is absolutely rubbish. And I'll explain why. This is not a tax. This is a policy that that people who don't pay tax, why should they get a tax refund? So you don't pay tax on this money that Julian's talking about, and yet you get a tax refund. I actually don't think that's fair. I actually don't think that's fair. And to say that most of the people that this is going to affect earn $30,000 a year is simply untrue. Most of the people that qualify for this are quite wealthy, or they wouldn't have the shares that they have. The other point, of course, to say is that 92% of Australians don't have access to this loophole. They don't. People who are on a pension or a part pension will have a pension guarantee. They will not be affected. The 92% of people, as I said, in that age bracket do not have access to this loophole. And it is a loophole. I mean, I know people who get this refund. And I'm really sorry, it is a loophole. And if you want to have good schools, you want to have a good education system, you want to have a good health system, then you should be paying tax. And that is our policy. I know it's not popular with some people, but the bulk of people in this country who are older are on the age pension, either part pension or full pension, and they will not be affected by this franking credit policy. And the other thing I'd say is to people, I'm sorry, that table over there is so noisy. Excuse me. Thanks. The other thing I'd say about this particular policy is that it's a big decision, and instead of trying to roll yourself into a little ball, Labor has had this policy out in the public arena for a very long time. We're not bringing it in on the eve of an election. So people have had time to find out about it, people have had time to learn about it. And the other point that I'd make in closing, Benjamin, is that, if we are sharing this country, there are times when an election comes and you make decisions about what party you're going to vote for. You make that decision about your personal circumstances, of course, but you also make that decision for what's best for the country, what's best for young people, what's best for everybody. And that is the way in which I would hope people would look at this particular issue.
I'm sorry, if this policy was really good, you'd be applying it to union-controlled super funds as well. The fact that you're not, and the fact that it's been out for so long and has been so roundly criticised all over the country, indicates that it is a terrible policy. Now there's plenty more. We could get started on the housing taxes as well, which, as I said earlier, are taking a cooling market and putting it into the deep freeze.
Well, Julian, I think we'll move on. I have a question here, which is addressed to both parties, but I actually think that I'll probably answer this myself. The question is, why are there no Chinese candidates standing for Labour Liberal in the lower house? And two, are the Chinese community only served as a cash cow? Three, why is aged care benefit not the same as NDIS? I think that I can answer the first two questions. Number one, I think Chinese Australian Forum, and I think that most of us who are active in political parties are complaining about underrepresentation of Chinese Australians in all major parties. So we have a much smaller pool of talents to choose from. I think this sort of complaint is as ridiculous as to complain to the Olympic organizers, why are there no Chinese Australian, in the field, track and field, or Why don't we put a few more Chinese Australians into the swimming team? You have to earn it, and nobody is saying that you can't go into it. And in fact, we do have Chinese Australians doing very well representing Australia in the diving team. So I think it is important in a liberal democracy in Australia that we take up the responsibility to participate actively in politics at all levels, not only when you are running for office.
Thank you, Benjamin. For people who didn't know me, my name is Helen Sham Ho. I was your first Chinese member of Parliament. I'd like to add to that because I come across quite a number of people around all the time. One of the major reasons for younger Chinese Australians who have not been able to join the political process is because they don't even know how to join a political party. And to me, in our great democracy, without the political party support, the chances of you being elected like the Green will be very difficult. So the major thing is there's not enough access to a political party, if you ask me, without looking at interference or whatever. You just joining, I have people asking me, how do you join the party? I said, well, you have to join the branch first. This kind of thing. I have to tell you, people actually ask me because I'm so more well known. So they ask me, how do you join a political party? Well, it's difficult because there's so many access. Anyway, that is the point.
All right, thank you very much, Helen. It is a problem that Chinese Australian Forum has been trying to solve for the last 32 years, and we still haven't got very far. But
can I put people on the spot here? I don't mind which political party, but I just wondered if people might raise their hands if they are a member of some political party or other in the room. There are very few, and that I think is the point that Helen was making. If you want to see more Chinese Australians in the Parliament, we need more Chinese Australians joining our party.
okay, now, anyone who wants to join the Liberal Party, go and see Scott Young. And anyone who wants to join the Labour Party, go and see Kendrick Chia or Jason Lee.
It's $40
the Green. Now, we won't deal with the Green, so not yet.
Thanks for being the local branch. The local branch. Okay.
Now, I think that we're running out of time, and I'll put the last question, and it relates to citizenship applications processing time. What is the real delay in citizenship when over 230,000 applications are in limbo? And the second part of the question, is your party prepared to speed up this process? If so, how is your party going to implement it? So maybe Julian will answer that first.
Well, thank you for that question. Since 2015, our government's introduced a range of integrity measures into the citizenship process to ensure that Australia is not giving the gift of citizenship lightly, but taking it seriously and making sure people are dealing properly with the issue. Now, we acknowledge that there's been an issue, and that's why there's been more resources put into the Department of Home Affairs to deal with complex citizenship cases. I'm told that between July 1, 2018 and the 31st of March this year, more than 103,400 approvals of citizenship were granted, compared to 50,190 approvals in the same period last year. This is a 106% increase. So we acknowledge it's an issue and we've done something about it, but we don't make any apology for ensuring that people meet the security and character requirements that are needed to become a citizen.
I think that question needs to be put to Peter Dutton, quite frankly. There are 230 citizenship applications that have not been processed. 230,000 not processed. Now, I don't know the reason for that, but I let people draw their own views. But it is unacceptable that there are that many applications that have not been processed, completely unacceptable. And the way in which the Home Affairs Agency, I understand, is dealing with this is saying that they're putting more resources in. Well, that may be the case, I don't know. It is very difficult to find out, but I just emphasise that there is no excuse for that many applications to be sitting in an inbox and not being dealt with. And I'll remind people also that when the debate about citizenship came through the Parliament, the changes were not accepted, or some of the changes were not accepted. The thing that the Labor Party objected to most that was trying to be introduced by the Home Affairs Minister was a level 6 English comprehension test, which was university level. Now that to me is unacceptable. It was unacceptable to our party because it meant that people who were fabulous people but may not have had university English were not considered to be going to be good citizens in this country. And I don't think you can make that assessment. Most people in the Parliament and many people in this room would not pass that language test had it been implemented. And that doesn't mean we're bad people. It just doesn't. And 230 applications, it doesn't matter how you slice or dice it, sitting there not being processed is wrong.
I'll just say something on the English language aspect of this, because Linda is right, it was an issue of controversy. Before I was a Member of Parliament, I worked in the university sector. And the truth is that IELTS of 6, which was the level requirement that we were asking for, is actually, in most disciplines now, regarded as inadequate. And you see this because so many of the professional bodies, whether it's teaching bodies or nursing bodies, medical bodies or engineering bodies, are actually saying the level is too low. We want a higher level of IELTS for our graduates. Having worked in the sector, you see universities admitting people who pass the IELTS at 6 and you have a conversation with them and you realise it's actually not that high a bar to pass. I first became aware of the importance of actually having people speaking English at the forum that was run by this organisation for me 10 years ago. When people talk to you about social isolation that people face if they don't have English. English is the passport to everything in this country. Whether it's a job, or whether it's knowing your neighbours, whether it's accessing services from government. And I'm not talking about people who are living here, we're talking about giving people a higher level of citizenship. We should have a reasonable level of English that people should have. My experience of what an IELTS 6 means is that is a reasonable and not particularly taxing level of English.
That is just not true, Julian. There are many people, I'm sorry, you can clap as much as you like, but that's just not true. It is just not true. Because many people, and I have spoken to them, I've met with them, they've come into my electoral office, who have tried to 3 or 4 times to try and get that English test, the level of whatever it is, and they've been knocked back because of that. Time and time again, each time costing them something like $300. So I just think we need to be very honest about that. It's controversial because it was unacceptable.
Thank you very much, Linda. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately this is all we have time for. Now I'd like to call on our committee member Jason Lee to move a vote of thanks.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's very frustrating having to give the vote of thanks because I'm itching to get into this debate. But given that I'm on the Labor side of politics, that would be a little bit biased of me. So it's always a pleasure thanking really good friends here, both Linda and Julian. I knew Linda before she was even in Parliament, and I can say this: a more courageous and capable woman in Australia you will not find. And the fact that there is a very good chance that she will be our next Minister for Families and Social Security, I can say that Australia and Australian families will be in really, really good hands. And Julian, I met Julian during the Republic debate some 20 years ago when we were both a bit younger. He was on the opposite side of that debate, still saying spurious arguments. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Shouldn't have said that. But we became, even though we were on different sides, we became very good friends. So please, ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking Linda and Julian for educating us and engaging us in the policies of their parties tonight. Could I also ask the committee members of CAF to just quickly stand up? There's further there. So the CAF committee conceived and organised and put this dinner together in record time. And I'd like us all just to thank the committee members under Ben's leadership. Where is everyone? Steve, Patrick, Tony, Cindy here, Andy, thank you, William. Just a fantastic effort in a short space of time. And lastly, I just wanted to finish with something that I think Ben talked about, and that is that in this environment, in this highly complex environment, for Chinese Australians in particular, it is so important that our community engages in the political process. When there are some out there who say that maybe Chinese Australians are not to be trusted, maybe we are in cahoots with a foreign power, the best answer to that is that we engage in politics and we show that we are just as Australian as anybody else. So, 在这里我就说几句中文吧。我刚说的这个给大家刚说的是，在这个很复杂的，有人可以说是反华的情况下，澳洲华人一定要多参与政治，一定要多对政治感兴趣。这样的话呢，我们才有声音，我们才有发言权。所以，我是要感谢大家今天来到这里，对政治的这个辩论感兴趣的，谢谢大家。